So there is a huge mistake that a lot of teachers make the first week back to school and in the weeks that follow. And I know because I have totally made this mistake, especially my first year of teaching. And the consequences can be really drastic. So let me tell you what happened when I first started teaching. I didn't really have a plan for how I was going to deal with just like common classroom issues like students talking or blurting answers out or, putting their head down, just little classroom behaviors. I didn't really have a plan. And so when these things happened, I just kind of didn't do anything about them. I figured it's not that big of a deal, right? They're just little issues, not big, not a huge deal if a couple students are whispering. I didn't want to like bring the hammer down really hard. So I just kind of let them go. But that was a huge mistake. And if you that is the biggest mistake, I think. One of the biggest mistakes is letting little things go. Because what happens is little problems, they just do not stay little. They grow and they increase. And what started out as just like a couple kids talking soon became multiple kids talking, became kids talking louder. They weren't whispering, they're getting bigger and louder and more. And before I knew it, I was maybe a month or two into school and I was trying to start, particularly my couple of classes in particular that were really rough. I was trying to start the class and it was all I could do to even get their attention to even start class. It was so bad. There were so many kids talking, so many people being disruptive all at the same time. And it was just utter chaos. So I want to talk to you for just a minute about how important it is to deal with issues while they're small, especially at that beginning of school. And I think what happens is a lot of times we don't deal with things for a few different reasons, because we don't know what to do or we don't really have a plan, or we figure it's really not that big of a deal, right? And there's even this advice that goes around. It says things like pick your battles, or don't sweat the small stuff. But as I've seen, and as if you've been a teacher for long, you've probably seen too, if we don't sweat the small stuff, if we let the little stuff go, it snowballs, right? It's like it snowballs and it gets worse and worse. Or to use a different analogy, it's like these little tiny fires. If we don't put them out, it just spreads. It grows and spreads, and before we know it, it is just utter chaos in our classroom. So it is actually really, really important that we deal with things while they are still small, especially at the beginning of the year. And we've already talked kind of about the practical reason of that because it snowballs, right? It keeps going. But there's a bigger reason behind that. And what it is this. When we don't deal with issues, we are showing our students we don't really mean what we say and that this isn't the line. And students naturally push boundaries. And so if we let them do some talking and then do more talking, they're just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing that line until it's way past where we ever wanted it to be. And in the process, they lose respect for us and kind of say, Mrs. Cardamus doesn't really deal with stuff. She kind of lets us do whatever. And so then they try more and more and more. And so it's really important that we don't let that happen, that we deal with things while they're still small and relatively easy to deal with before students push way past the boundary that we want to do. Now, the question though is, how do we do that though, right? In order to be able to deal with the first issues that come up that first week of school, you need to know what you're going to do. And that's why we believe it's so important to have a classroom management plan. And when we teach classroom management plans, there's multiple parts to them, but two of the parts that I want to talk about right now, the first is getting clear on your expectations, getting clear on where that line is. And that actually is where the advice to pick your battles, that's where we want to do that. That is where that's good advice, to pick your battles ahead of time. In other words, to say, okay, what is allowed, what isn't? I might say, you know what, I'm going to let students stand up to go and get a tissue on their own. I'm not fighting that battle. That's not a battle I'm fighting. They're allowed to do that. Or I'm going to allow this. I'm going to allow that. I'm not going to allow this. I'm not going to allow that. So getting really clear on the boundaries, that's where we pick our battles. Once we pick the battles, though, we need to be really clear and get some clarity on how are we going to deal with it when students cross that boundary. So, for example, we're taking just the example of students talking to each other or blurting out answers. Do I know what I'm going to do about that? And it's very important to have a plan. So the first time it happens, we're not going, I don't know what to do. That's why I didn't deal with it. I didn't know what to do. So I think I gave a look and that was it. And that's just not enough. I didn't have a plan, so I didn't know what to do. So I didn't do anything. So it's really important to know, first of all, where is the line? What am I going to allow? What am I not? And then to know, what am I going to do when students cross the line? Then when it happens, and it's going to happen the first, second, third day of school. I mean, it's going to happen pretty quickly, and we need to be ready for it and just deal with it according to our plan really consistently. And when we do, students very quickly see, oh, okay, Mrs. Cardamus means what she says. She's going to stick with it, right? And same thing with you. They say, okay, so and so, they mean what they say. They're sticking with it. And you're putting out all these little fires before they can get out of control. And that first week of school is such a key time. If you do it right from day one, you will save yourself so much chaos, so much hassle. So that's my biggest encouragement to you. Make a plan, pick your battles ahead of time, and then when it comes, deal with those little problems as they come up, one at a time. Deal with them, nip them in the bud. It's going to be so much better. If you're saying, Linda, I really could use some help putting together that plan, I'm not really sure what to do, we would love to help you with it in Classroom Management 101. That is what we do. There are short video trainings, copy and paste plan templates, and mentors to help you wherever you need it. We would love to help you inside Classroom Management 101 if you need a little bit more help. Thank you guys, and have a great first week of school.